Hi everyone, today I'm talking about The King is Dead by Peer Sylvester, published by Osprey Games. Now this is the second edition of the game. The original one is a game that I never played, so this is very much new for 2020, kind of a fresh kind of lick of paint to the game. The game takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play and accommodates 2 to 4 players. It's an area control style game, but with a bit of a difference in terms that you don't actually have your own player pieces. You are actually kind of investing in the different nations on this map of England. You know, you've got England, Scotland and Wales. They're your three kind of warring factions. You've also got a bit of interference from France, which can kind of throw a spanner in the works. And essentially, it's kind of a hand management game as well, because every player is going to start with an identical set of 8 cards. There is a variant to that, but I'll cover the base game kind of to start with. And essentially, you are going to keep playing cards or passing and resolving kind of the different nation or the different counties one at a time until there is an ultimate winner, or until there is a certain region dominating the board, or certain country even. And then whoever's kind of got the biggest investment in the dominant country is going to be the winner. And mechanically, the game is going to play out by playing a card or passing. So when you play a card, you can kind of manipulate the board state by kind of shuffling cubes from one county to another, you know, either swapping 2 for 1 or 1 for 1, or kind of adding new cubes of a certain nation onto the board, just kind of switching out the different order that the regions score in. So you've got a lot of manipulation that you can do onto the game to suit the board state to your needs. However, kind of a crucial element to the game is the management of those actions, because, as I said, every player only gets 8 cards, and those 8 cards are what you've got for the whole game. And there can be situations where you completely spend all your action cards by halfway through the game, and you're going to have to spend the rest of the game completely powerless. So there is this real tension on when you're going to play those cards to their full effect and to your full advantage. And that kind of weighting of that decision can be quite tense, because you don't want to underutilize those cards, and at the same time you don't want to be left stranded having not used those cards, or being left in a state where those cards aren't going to be much use at all. So that's really interesting, and kind of the hand management of that is a real kind of visceral tension throughout the game. This game is very much it's a bit of a brain burner, because there is a lot of variables into the game, but at the same time it has almost like an abstract style feel to it, because the information available to you is actually quite accurate. But on top of that kind of accuracy, as I said, the variables can throw you down so many different paths that can completely frazzle your brain, because you do have to very concisely cater your moves to your needs, and not to benefit your opponent. So whenever you play one of those cards, you are also going to take one of these cubes off the board, and you can take any cube from anywhere. And obviously each cube, there's 3 different colours of cubes. You've got the yellow representing England, the red doing Wales, and blue to Scotland. And kind of when each player kind of passes consecutively, the next region in a kind of pre-allocated manner is going to score. And whoever's got the most cubes, or any region who's got the most cubes in that county, is going to place a kind of control disc in that county, which is going to kind of cement their kind of control for the rest of the game. And at the end of the game, once every kind of county has been scored, whoever has kind of got the most cubes that they've taken off into their kind of influence of the most dominant dominant country is going to be the winner. And as I said, to do that can be very small nuances in between the winning and losing. So this very much is a game is a gamer's game. I think if you're very, you like the kind of intense strategy, mind against mind kind of game feel, you're going to quite like this one, I think, to challenge you in different ways, to see how far you can plan ahead, and to kind of just outmaneuver your opponent, because it very much is a game like that. I don't think this is a game that you're going to invite your casual friends to sit down and enjoy, because I think the fun factor in this game lies in that tension and strategy, and not in a kind of a whimsical throwaway, kind of sit back and relax style feel to it, because it's a very tense and very confrontational area control game, which is funny because you don't actually control any region or any country individually. It's a very unique feel to it, and a kind of the macro view onto the game board has a very unique feel and vibe to the game, which is unlike any other game I've played, to be honest. And there is an alternative way that the game can end, and that is by France invading different regions. And that happens if two or three nations tie on a certain region. So if there's no dominant leader, then France are going to occupy that region. And if that ever happens 3 times throughout the game ends immediately, and then scoring goes to whoever's got the most sets of each nation. So obviously, in one turn the game's going to end by a certain nation dominating, and then whoever's got the most influence cubes of that nation. The second one is if France invade 3 different nations, then whoever's got the most sets of each nation is going to win. So those 2 scoring mechanisms completely contrast with each other, and bearing both in mind is going to be very important. But at the same time, you've got to be confident enough to know when to invest in a certain winning strategy, and knowing when to pull the plug on that is almost where the nuance lies into being good at this game or not. I think this is a game that you can really, it's going to really benefit repeated plays, and almost going to be a game that's going to benefit players of a similar skill level who want to go on a bit of a journey together and have a bit of a rivalry. And it really is a game that's very easy to learn, but very difficult to master. And as I said, playing it again and again and again is going to help you get your head around those nuances and know when to do certain things at certain times. It's going to be, it's going to be quite rewarding. There's almost kind of an element of memory to this game as well, because if you're playing the base or the core variant of the game, every player is going to start with the exact same hand of cards. So knowing what cards other players have played already is very important, because sometimes they might be left in a situation where they can't kind of reverse the move that you've made that's gonna suit you. So you can do things more confidently. Whereas if you're unsure what cards they have left in their hand, then you are potentially going to play a card to not much use. And the game, interestingly, does give you a kind of a face-up discard pile, but only the top card, so only the last card you've played is ever visible to each player. So again, that element of memory is quite important. So yeah, it's a game of very small gains, a very confrontational, very tight game. So if that interests you, then definitely give this one a go. So meaningful decision-wise, this game has a plethora of those. I mean, every decision you make has a huge weighting on what you're going to do and the outcome of the game. Interestingly, when you've got to be careful about what regions or what nations control each region, because as soon as that region's scored, all the cubes from that region are taken off the board and back into the common pool of cubes, which is important, because if you have a completely runaway nation who's maybe dominating a region by 5 cubes to 1, then all those 5 cubes are going to be eliminated from the board. So if you have an investment in a certain nation, then you're going to have to want to win each nation by as few cubes as you can, really, to keep the cube presence of that nation on the board as much as possible. So yeah, meaningful decision-wise is absolutely amazing, to be honest. Balance-wise, again, perfectly balanced. Everyone has the exact same hand of cards. You know the board state. You know what nation's going to score when, or what county's going to score when. So there really is a lot of autonomy in this game. There's a lot of clear information. It's a pretty transparent game. However, there are kind of ways to throw kind of a difference in with that, because the game does come with a variant where you have these additional cards where you swap 3 cards out of the standard deck in with 3 of these kind of wild cards that give you unique things to do. So you can't have kind of perfect information about what your opponents can do, but you've got a pretty good idea. Whereas if you play the core game, you know exactly what they can do. So kind of depending on the feel you like, if you like a kind of a bit more wildness, or you like the kind of clear accountability, then you can play the game to whatever version you want. Time investment wise, I mean, it's really good. I mean, this is a very meaty, very juicy game that you can get done in about half an hour. So yeah, I don't think there's much. I can't really think of many games out there that offer such a deep of a game in such a short time stamp. So that's a huge credit to the game. Uptime as well. I mean, the things you do on those cards are very simple. They're very snappy. They're also, you're going to be passing a lot of the time as well. So turns generally go by quite quickly. However, in the same vein, there is a lot of scope for analysis paralysis because, as I said, the knock-on effect of each action you take is huge, and you know how far down that kind of trail of thought you have to go down in each of those moves can be quite paralyzing. So you've got to kind of play on a bit more of a kind of on your kind of instincts more than perfectly calculating what you can do, because I think that can slow the game down quite a bit. And if you do have those very calculated, very kind of methodical players, then that can slow the game to a halt quite a bit. But at the same time, if you like that kind of game, that almost abstract feel to it, then you are going to like it. Interaction-wise, again, there is not much more of a test of wits that you're going to get in terms of this one. This is very much dependent on what other players do. Everything you do is going to influence other players. You've got to know what the position other players are in, because you can see what nations they're influencing, and you've got a good idea of what cards they can play. So not only playing your game is important, knowing what other players can do is equally as important. So a very interactive game. Replayability wise as well, I think the game has huge replayability because it's a very much classical, very, I said, almost abstract style game that rewards repeated plays, but at the same time, I don't think, or at least for me, this is a game that I'm going to get to the table again and again and again and again, because it has, or at least very frequently, I mean, it's very timeless in its field, but at the same time, it's not the kind of game that I like to play frequently, and that's because it is so confrontational and it is so calculated. So yeah, for me personally, it's not a tremendously replayable game in terms of frequency, but longevity, I think it stands up tremendously. Component quality and the aesthetics of the game is perfectly suited to the way the game looks. I mean, the board itself is very small. There's very few components into the game because obviously every player just has their hand of cards. They have the the county cards, a bunch of cubes, and a bunch of discs, and that's literally all you get in the game. The box is actually, although it's quite small, it's actually probably 2 or 3 times as big as it needs to be. But I understand why they do that. So it's a very concise and compact game, very few components, completely not sprawling, very very tight in almost every way possible. And again, the look and aesthetic of the game is great. I love the way the map looks. It's very classic looking, but still very bright and vibrant. The artwork of the cards has that medieval feel to it, which I love, and I love medieval style art. And yeah, that goes hand in hand with this game design and the theme of the game. So yeah, I really like the aesthetic and visual appeal of it, and the components are very well done. I think Osprey Games generally do a really good job of producing their games. Again, without overdoing things, and just having nice products. So yeah, like the way the game looks and like the way the game is produced. And the progression of the game is very interesting because, as I said, you are very much limited to those hand of cards, and if at the end of the game you still have a lot of power by having a lot of cards, and that's going to give you a lot of stroke in the game. So each game's arc is going to be quite different because some games might be very much played out at the kind of the front of the game, some might be played out more at the end of the game, or some might be kind of more even spread. So yeah, there is a great sense of progression and a great tension that builds throughout. And knowing when to commit to something is so important in this one. Scalability wise as well, surprisingly again, for an area control game, this one works very well for 2. It feels a lot more abstract and it feels a lot more control at 2, whereas obviously at the higher player counts you've got a bit more of a wild factor because there are obviously the variables divert in millions of different ways. And in a 2-player game it's very much head to head, and it works very very well but very differently. So 2 very different vibes depending on the player count. And comparison wise as well, although I can't think of a direct comparison, the timeless feel to it is very synonymous with games such as El Grande, as I said. El Grande is one of my favourite games of all time, and while that is very much timeless, this one's very much timeless. They're still very different, even though they're both area control or area majority style games. So yeah, I think if you like your area majority games but want something different, but again timeless, then this is definitely one to check out. It really is a clean design that doesn't have any bloat to it whatsoever. Again, a game of very small margins, very small wins, very nuanced. But again, if you like that, it's going to be up your street. So yeah, overall, this is a brilliant design, truly a great design. Not a game that I'm going to get to the table extremely frequently, but it's a game that's so easy to explain to new players, and if they want to try something a bit more strategic, something a bit more confrontational, then this is definitely one to whip out, again, because it's so easy to explain, so easy to get to the table. Yeah, it's definitely just worth giving a go. And not only that, the time commitment is only about 30 minutes. So, you know, if you completely get squashed and don't do a great job of or understand or fully comprehend the rules and how it plays, then giving it another go straight after is not going to be big of a deal. You know, you're not going to be waiting hours, waiting to lose. So yeah, it's a great package, and I really do like it. I can't really complain whatsoever about the game mechanisms, about how the game works. The only thing is, if the game doesn't appeal to you, you're probably not going to like it. You know, if the fun factor lies in the strategy and the dryness with this one, where I know a lot of players don't like that. So yeah, if it does appeal to you, you're going to like it, I assure you. So definitely give this one a go. It is very unique, and I personally find it a lot of fun. It's staying in my collection. I want to play this a good few amount of times, all the different player counts. Really try and get better at this one, because again, it's a game that does reward those repeated plays, and a game that you can get better and better at. And you know, when you first play it, it feels like you're very much a fish out of water. You don't know what to do and when. But when it starts to come together, you start to get your kind of head wrapped around the way things work. It really is a juicy game with so much strategy. So that concludes my thoughts on The King is Dead. It definitely gets a seal of quality for me. Fantastic game, but ultimately the fun factor isn't quite there to take it to the higher levels for me. But yeah, no slight on the game, then that's more of a personal taste thing. So yeah, great game. I hope you've enjoyed the review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. So I hope you've enjoyed the review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board.